Like always, thank you to my patrons for helping make this video happen. Indiana's miraculous 2025 season needs no introduction. The first 16-0 season in modern FBS college football history. The first Big Ten champion not named Ohio State or Michigan since 1960 Minnesota. The first-time champion since 1996 Florida, all at a program that, going into the 2025 season, had lost more than any other program in the country. It's a team that will undoubtedly go down in history as one of college football's greatest stories. And yet, throughout their 2-year run of dominance dating all the way back to 2024, I was reminded of the last time a basketball school, one with little to no history of football success, broke the college football landscape. The Kansas Jayhawks are the fifth losingest program in college football history, only surpassed in total losses by Wake Forest, Rutgers, Northwestern, and Indiana. It's a historic futility characterized by long stretches of losing put up against 3 to 7 year spans of competent football. It's in these respites from losing that Kansas derives its best seasons, including all 4 of their Big 8 titles, 2 Orange Bowl appearances, and their 6 lone ranked finishes prior to the 2007 season. Their last period of winning football would come in the early to mid-90s, where the normally hapless Jayhawks would finish with 4 winning seasons, finishing ranked twice, and finishing in the top 10 in 1995. Their second ever top 10 finish off a 10-2 record and a win over fellow basketball blue blood UCLA in the Holiday Bowl. The man behind this 90s renaissance would be Glenn Mason, with the 1995 season being his best season in Lawrence before being hired away by Georgia. At least until Mason later turned down the job due to personal family matters, staying at Kansas one more year before being hired away for real this time by Minnesota, sending the Jayhawks plummeting back down to their historical mean. From 1996 to 2004, Kansas would go a combined 37-66 in 9 straight losing seasons, making and losing a single bowl game, and never finishing with more than 3 conference wins in a season. That being said, going into 2007, Kansas is finally riding some momentum, not only finishing with records at or above 500 in 2 straight seasons for the first time since the 90s, but returning a core of upperclassmen players had formed the core of this Jayhawk squad. On offense, the core would comprise of fullback Brandon McAnderson, receivers Dexton Fields and Marcus Henry, tight end Derek Fine, and after a lengthy battle for the starting gig in the offseason, quarterback Todd Reesing. Then, on defense, James McClinton would take charge up front. James Holt and Mike Rivera would lead the linebacker core, and standout defensive back Aqib Talib would hold down the secondary. The Jayhawks would also see plenty of contributions from select freshmen and sophomores, notably running back Jake Sharp and receiver Desmond Briscoe, but on the whole, experience would be their biggest strength. And on September 1st, 2007, those strengths would be put to the test against Central Michigan. It's the middle of the second quarter, and the Kansas defense has just forced the Central Michigan offense to punt for the 6th straight time. To return is the Jayhawks' Raymond Pendleton, seeing some of his first meaningful snaps in his 3 years in Lawrence. And soon after, he finds himself leaving the Chippewas in the dust, moments away from his first ever touchdown. Undoubtedly feeling the excitement, Pendleton would leap into the end zone from around the 1-yard line, a stunt that would cost the team a flag for excessive celebration, and Raymond Pendleton a soon-to-go viral chewing out from his coach. This is Mark Mangino, the face of 2000's Kansas football. Climbing the assistant coach ladder on the offensive side of the ball, he'd first become widely known as Mark Stoops' offensive coordinator on his national title-winning 2000's Oklahoma team. An effort that won Mangino the Frank Broyles Award and, eventually, his first college head coaching job at Kansas. His efforts would bring the Jayhawks out of their post-Glenn Mason slump and back to playing competitive football, making a bowl game in his second year in Lawrence and finishing above 500 in his fourth, the program's first winning season in 10 years. This reputation, one of a program resurrector, would go hand in hand with his other reputation, one Pendleton got up close and personal with in the middle of the Central Michigan game, a reputation of being a bit of a hard ass. It goes all the way back to his first head coaching gig in 1990, where the parents of Lincoln High School attempted to get him ousted for his hard-nosed, profanity-riddled ways of coaching his team. It's a method that followed him to Kansas and would occasionally go beyond the team. For instance, he'd get into a bit of hot water early in his Kansas tenure for verbally berating an official during his kids' high school football game. And in a close 2004 loss to Texas, he'd go on record in front of the media to not only disagree with a vital offensive pass interference call that sealed the game for the Longhorns, but claimed the officials were acting on behalf of the BCS to give Texas preferential treatment.
You know what this is all about, don't you? That's right. BCS. That's what made a difference today in the game. That's what made a difference in the call in front of their bench. Dollar signs.
It's a claim that cost him a public apology and $5,000. If getting into trouble with your own athletic department wasn't enough, his football program would also briefly get in trouble with the NCAA for academic fraud in 2005, albeit without Mangino's knowledge, leading to a brief scholarship reduction in 2007 and 2008. All to say, Mark Mangino's style of coaching was abrasive and often rubbed players, parents, and even his employers at times the wrong way. But maybe it was needed for a job like Kansas. After all, Mangino's on the very short list of coaches who figured out how to make it work in Lawrence, how to win at a place that simply does not win. The Pendleton incident would end up being the most notable event of an eventual 4-0 start for the Jayhawks, beating Central Michigan by 45, FCS Southeastern Louisiana by 62, Toledo by 32, avenging a double overtime loss to the Rockets a season prior, and Florida International by 52. Next up, the year's first conference opponent, the number 24 Kansas State Wildcats. Kansas, historically speaking, has the edge over very few teams. Among the programs of the original Big Eight, the teams Kansas has played the most throughout the school's history, only 2 teams have a losing record to the Jayhawks: the Iowa State Cyclones and in-state rival Kansas State, though you'd hardly be able to tell in 2007. Since Bill Snyder took over the Kansas State program in 1989, in turn transforming Futility U into a Big 8 and eventual Big 12 contender, the Wildcats have held a dominant 13-5 record over the Jayhawks, a record that includes an 11-game K-State winning streak from 1993 to 2003. To maintain their undefeated record, Kansas would have to do something they haven't done since 1989 and come out of Manhattan, Kansas a winner. The game would begin with a Kansas interception that soon turned into 6 for the home team, an early showcase of the high-flying offense that scored the Cats a win over Texas the week prior. Kansas would not trail for long, though, marching down the field early in the second quarter to find pay dirt for the first time in a conference play off an elusive Jake Sharp run. The back and forth would continue, first with a powerful Kansas State rushing touchdown of their own, to then be answered by a passing touchdown to defensive back Aqib Talib, bringing the two rivals into the half tied at 14. Then, shortly after halftime, Kansas would take their first lead of the game off a pass to Desmond Briscoe, a lead the Jayhawks would immediately try to give up, first with a made field goal from the Cats, then with a turnover on downs at the K-State 17-yard line, and finally with Reesing's third interception of the game, a sequence that'd bring the home team a 3-point lead midway through the fourth, a lead that lasted for about a minute before Kansas retook the lead, going up by 3. 2 K-State interceptions in the hands of Kendrick Harper and Talib would follow, with a Kansas field goal sandwiched in between to bring the Kansas lead to 6, a lead they'd ultimately never relinquish. For the first time since the 80s, Kansas had won in the Little Apple. The Jayhawks would be rewarded with both their first AP poll appearance in 11 years, debuting at number 20 in the Week 6 poll, and a home game against the worst team in the conference, the Baylor Bears, and after a lightning delay pushed the game back a few hours, Kansas would make easy work of the ailing Bears, winning 58-10 to push their winning streak to 6. In stark contrast to their 48-point rout of Baylor, their next test at Colorado would be nothing short of a rock fight, one best summarized by looking at the mess of a first half these two teams shared. Beginning with a Kansas punt at their own 47, followed by a Colorado punt at midfield, followed by yet another Kansas punt at their own 9-yard line, to then end the quarter with a Colorado fumble, the first of an eventual 5 turnovers the Buffaloes and Jayhawks would combine for throughout the game. The Jayhawks would open the second with a field goal off the Colorado fumble, the only points that would be scored this entire half. Then came another Colorado punt, a Kansas turnover on downs at the Colorado 29, a missed 46-yard field goal from the Buffaloes, another Kansas punt, another Colorado punt, and then one last fumble recovered by Colorado, yet with no time left on the clock to do much of anything with it. While an uncharacteristically unproductive game from the normally formidable Kansas offense, the defense would go on to carry the Jayhawks to victory, leaving Boulder, Colorado with a 19-14 win, proving just how versatile this team could be in finding ways to win, improving to 7-0 for the first time since 1995. The following week would bring yet another road game, this time at Texas A&M, and yet again the Kansas defense would be put to the test as both teams went scoreless throughout the first half. As they did against Colorado, the defense would once more hold out until the offense was able to put some points on the board, going on to score 13 unanswered points throughout the third quarter to leave College Station with an eventual 19-11 win, their first win over the Aggies since the Big 12 was formed. They'd improved to 8-0 for the first time in 98 years, and soon after they'd enter the AP Top 10 for just the 7th time in program history. Next on the schedule was a team Kansas knew all too well. The Nebraska-Kansas series is known for primarily 2 things. For one, prior to its cancellation in 2010, it was the longest uninterrupted series in college football history, having been played for 105 consecutive seasons before Nebraska's departure for the Big Ten. Secondly, it is among college football's most lopsided rivalries, with the Cornhuskers not only owning a .791 winning percentage in the series, but a 36-game winning streak beginning in 1968 and ending in 2005, just 2 years prior to the 2007 season, good for both the longest winning streak over a conference opponent and the second longest over any opponent in the history of college football. That being said, the two teams would find themselves in uncharted waters going into their 2007 bout. The Jayhawks in the top 10, and the Huskers in the midst of their second losing season since the 60s. For the first time in decades, a Kansas win over Nebraska simply looked inevitable. What was far from inevitable was Kansas scoring 76 to get it. 572 total yards of offense, a 5-0 turnover disparity, and a total of 0 punts on the day would tell the story of the Jayhawks' historic 76-39 win over Nebraska. a total that'd stand as both the most points Kansas would ever score in the rivalry, but the most either team would score in the 117-game series. After Nebraska came two more blowout conference wins for the ascendant Hawks. First, a 43-28 win at Oklahoma State, followed by a 45-7 win against Iowa State, bringing Kansas to 11-0, their best start in program history. The Jayhawks would also enter the AP Top 5 for the third time ever. By their 11th game, Mangino and his team had already pieced together the greatest season in Kansas football history, and were now just a single game away from playing for the Big 12 title and, perhaps, for the Jayhawks' first national championship. All that remained was one last skirmish, just beyond the Kansas-Missouri border. Kansas was not 2007's only surprise, with the season playing host to a number of notable Cinderellas. For instance, there was South Florida's 6-0 start that saw the Bulls rise to as high as number 2 in the AP poll. There was the eventual 12-1 Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, who rode the nation's highest-scoring offense to the Sugar Bowl. And in the Big 12, there was the Jayhawks Mirror, another senior-laden team, one also boasting both a stingy, opportunistic defense and one of the nation's best spread offenses, led by another coach who'd arrived in the early 2000s to resurrect another Big 12 bottom feeder. They were the 10-1 Missouri Tigers, the Jayhawks' arch-rival, sharing a series comprising over 100 games and one brief military conflict. Yet no moment would be as big as their matchup on November 24th, 2007. It would be hosted at Arrowhead Stadium for the first time in series history, and from the stadium's second largest crowd, drawing the largest television audience of any 2007 regular season game. With a Big 12 championship berth, a potential national championship berth, and considering LSU's loss to Arkansas the day prior, number 1 in the AP poll on the line. Armageddon at Arrowhead had begun. The first quarter began with a defensive standoff between two of the conference's better defensive units. That is, until Missouri drew first blood as Chase Daniel connected with Martin Rucker in the end zone to put the Tigers up 7. Then, just as the Kansas offense looked poised to strike back, a racing interception would hand the ball back to Missouri, who'd promptly cap a 98-yard drive with another Daniel passing touchdown to go up by 2 scores. For the first time this season, Kansas would trail at the half, a hole that would immediately get worse with yet another interception to open the third quarter, followed by another Tiger touchdown to fall behind by 21. On the ropes and desperate for a big play, the Kansas offense would finally deliver with a 34-yard heave to Desmond Briscoe to set up the Jayhawks' first score of the game. And while Missouri would answer back just before the fourth quarter, the nation's second highest scoring offense was finally awake. And before anyone in Kansas City knew it, the Hawks would cut the lead to 14, then to 10, then finally to 6, with 2 minutes and 3 seconds left on the clock. A failed onside kick and a subsequent Missouri 3-and-out would follow, leaving just 12 seconds on the clock for Reesing and the Kansas offense to work with. In a season filled with the strange, miraculous, and unbelievable, the Jayhawks would get one last shot at 12-0.
Pretty amazing fourth quarter by the Jayhawks. In trouble. There's a safety. 36-28.
Kansas would go down 36-28, sending their hated rivals to the Big 12 championship with a number 1 next to their name. But there was a silver lining. Firstly, Missouri would hang on to their top ranking for only a week before losing to Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship. Secondly, they would be selected to play in their third ever major bowl, the 2008 Orange Bowl, to go up against ACC champion Virginia Tech. Lastly, there was simply nothing Kansas could do. The game was decided long before kickoff. The 2007 season is among college football's oddest seasons, not just for the unusual amount of non-traditional powers having historic seasons, but for a number of superstitious trends that permeated the sport. Chief among them, the curse of number 2. beginning on September 30th with an inexplicable 24-23 Stanford victory over the number 2 USC Trojans. Nearly every other team ranked number 2 in the polls would suffer an upset within 2 weeks of being selected number 2 overall. Number 2 California would lose their homecoming game to an unranked Oregon State. Number 2 South Florida would be taken down by an unranked Rutgers. Number 2 Boston College would lose at home to an unranked Florida State. Number 2 Oregon would lose to an unranked Arizona. And Kansas, poor Kansas, would lose to number 3 Missouri, another victim of the curse of number 2. Ultimately, the Kansas Jayhawks could no longer end their magical season with a championship, but they could at least end it with a win. The Orange Bowl would begin as many Kansas games had this season, with a Jayhawk defensive shutout punctuated with a pick six midway through the first to give Kansas the first points of the game. Then, to open the second, came another Virginia Tech pick, this time turning into 3 for the Hawks. A racing to Henry touchdown would follow, but the Hokies would soon swing back, finishing the half with a Brandon Orr rushing touchdown to cut the lead to 10. Then a punt return early in the third would bring Tech within 3, a swing in momentum made even more dire with an untimely Kansas interception, forcing Virginia Tech to punt from their own 34 to then record a pick of their own to set up an easy Kansas rushing touchdown to once more go up by 10. Virginia Tech's last chance would come late in the fourth off a Sean Glennon to Justin Harper touchdown to cut the lead to 3 late in the fourth, giving the Hokies a chance at an onside kick, an onside kick recovered by the Jayhawks. Kansas 24, Virginia Tech 21. Kansas would end their greatest season in program history 12-1, winning their first major bowl game and finishing tied for the best record in the nation, an effort that earned the Jayhawks their first postseason first-place votes in the AP poll in program history. 8 players would end with all-conference honors, while 2, Anthony Collins and Aqib Talib, earned first-team All-American honors, Talib becoming the first Kansas consensus All-American since Dave Janes in 1973. Mark Mangino predictably would sweep Coach of the Year honors, winning just about every single National Coach of the Year award possible. Then there was Todd Reesing, a man who wasn't even the clear starting quarterback going into the 06-07 offseason, who'd shatter numerous Kansas quarterback records that still hold to this day, including completions, total yards, yards per game, and touchdowns. And then, later that same academic year, the Kansas basketball team won the national championship, putting both the football team and the athletic department as a whole in even more rarefied air, joining the 06-07 Florida Gators as the only schools to win both the NCAA tournament and a BCS Bowl in the same year, a club that to this day only includes the Jayhawks and Gators. Ultimately, the 2007 season would not be a turning point for the Kansas football program in the same way Kansas State's 1995 season or even Indiana's 2024 season was. It was the pinnacle. It was, unfortunately, only downhill from here. The 2008 season, while not reaching the lofty heights of 2007, would be more than respectable for the Jayhawks, finishing 8-5 and, in a twist of fate, ending the regular season playing spoiler to Missouri and Kansas State, beating their rival 40-37. It would, at least as of the 2025 season, be the Jayhawks' last win over the Tigers as Missouri jumped ship to the SEC. Then, in 2009, everything began to fall apart. Before an eventual 30-34 loss to Colorado, the beginning of an eventual 7-game skid, Mark Mangino would verbally berate linebacker Arist Wright, prompting an internal investigation on behalf of the university that would eventually see Mangino fired, finishing his tenure in Lawrence second all-time in career wins. What followed Mangino's investigation and eventual ousting was arguably the worst stretch in Kansas football history, suffering 14 straight losing seasons from 2009 to 2022, with a combined record of 34-132 and 4 seasons with 1 or less wins. A small price to pay, however, for the greatest season in program history. I'd like to, again, thank my patrons: Philip, Mega Doomer, Scarface1, The Hidden Source, CC, Adrian Genge, The Eruption, Trash Can Gus, Justin Pedraza, October Rust 02, Class Jackson Lawsuit, Lance Justice, Joe Sports 2022, Authentic Sims, Ryan Liu, William L. Jagnow, Captain Coey, Mantis Toboggan, Aura, Ryan Brandenburg, Jackson Goyard, I'm Not Kyle, Kobe Pasklevich, Postal Toast, Crosley Jones, at Signwood, Sean McWilliams, Benny Bape, Lurker, Cole, Jake Hagman, Colin Northrup, Sock, Nick Knudsen, and Voidman. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see y'all in the next video.